The hard truth is that most of what you call complexity is not intelligence at work. It is fear, dressed up as busyness. And that is why simplicity, real simplicity, doesn't feel peaceful at first. It feels like standing in an empty room with nowhere to hide. If you stay with me, you will come away with a different relationship to discomfort. You will see why a simpler life can feel strangely threatening, why your mind resists it even when you say you want it, and how to practice a kind of simplicity that does not weaken you but strengthens you. Not a minimalist aesthetic, not a productivity trick, but a steadier inner posture. Fewer false obligations, fewer performative battles, fewer frantic explanations. A way to meet fear, failure, pain, and uncertainty without multiplying them. And in that, a quiet form of freedom. Here is the first reversal. Simplicity is not easy. It is demanding. Complexity is what the mind chooses when it wants to avoid something straightforward and difficult, like admitting what you want, accepting what you cannot control, or grieving what you lost without turning grief into 1,000 distractions. The hard truth is that your mind prefers noise to clarity. Noise gives you plausible deniability. If everything is complicated, then nothing is your fault. Nothing is fully yours to choose. You can keep moving without deciding. And yet, a life without decisions becomes one long improvisation performed under pressure for an audience that may not even exist. Think of what happens when your phone is silent. At first there is relief. Then almost immediately the itch. The hand reaches without thinking. Not because you need information, but because stillness asks a question. What are you feeling right now? A Stoic once observed that we are disturbed not by events, but by our judgments about them. But lived honestly, that insight is not a quote to admire. It is an invitation that can feel unforgiving. In stillness, your judgments become audible. In simplicity, you can no longer blame the room for your own restlessness. Now a practical scene, modern and ordinary. You clear your weekend, determined to reset. No errands, no plans. You imagine peace, and then Saturday morning arrives, and the simplicity feels like exposure. You start reorganizing drawers, searching for the perfect podcast, planning meals for the week, making lists for lists. The mind creates tasks the way a body in cold weather creates shivers, not to move you forward, but to keep you from feeling the cold. Second reversal. What you call comfort is often just familiarity. Simplicity is uncomfortable because it is unfamiliar to a mind trained by constant inputs. It removes the usual anesthesia. When distractions fade, you encounter the unedited version of yourself, desires that were postponed, regrets that were postponed, truths that were postponed. The hard truth is that many people do not fear suffering as much as they fear meaning. Meaning demands commitment, and commitment creates the possibility of failure. If you keep your life complicated, you can delay the moment when you must try. You can stay in preparation. You can remain a potential self, rather than a real one. A deeper reflection. The Stoics spoke often of control, but not as a way to dominate life, as a way to stop bargaining with it. There are things you can govern, your attention, your choices, your honesty, and there are things you cannot, other people's opinions, outcomes, time, chance. Complexity often appears when you secretly try to control what cannot be controlled. You send the extra message, you rehearse the argument, you refresh the inbox, you imagine every possible future. The mind calls it diligence, but it is often an attempt to purchase certainty with effort. And certainty is not for sale. A practical example. You prepare for a conversation that matters. You write what you will say, then rewrite it, then imagine their response, then craft your response to their response. The day arrives and the conversation goes differently anyway. The preparation was not useless, but notice how easily it becomes a substitute for courage. Simplicity would be, say what is true, say it clearly, and accept that you cannot choreograph the other person's heart. Third reversal. Simplicity does not remove problems. It removes the fantasy that you can solve life by mental overproduction. In a simple life, you still face fear, but you face it directly. You still face pain, but you stop adding unnecessary suffering on top of it. The hard truth is that we inflate our lives with necessary complications that are really reputational strategies. We over-explain so we won't be misunderstood. We overachieve so we won't be dismissed. We overcommit so we won't be forgotten. And then we call the exhaustion adult life, as though fatigue were evidence of virtue. Reflection, quietly, ask yourself what you do when you are unsure of your worth. Many of us build scaffolding. We add credentials, commitment, social proof, constant motion. It feels safer to be a moving target than a still one. But the cost is that your inner life becomes rented space, and any rented space can be revoked. Practical example. You are offered a new opportunity, another responsibility, another role, another project. It flatters you. It frightens you. You say yes immediately because simplicity would require you to pause and ask, does this align with my values, or am I buying approval? The pause is uncomfortable because it forces an adult answer. Complexity allows a child's answer, I don't know, but I'll do more. Fourth reversal. Simplicity is not a reduction of life. It is a reduction of self-deception. And self-deception is what keeps anxiety alive. Anxiety thrives in vague obligations, indefinite timelines, unclear priorities, and the constant feeling that you should be somewhere else as someone else. Here, the Stoic tool becomes practical. Distinguish what is yours from what is not, and then behave accordingly. Not perfectly, not rigidly, but sincerely. When your responsibilities multiply beyond your values, life becomes a courtroom where you are always on trial. Simplicity is walking out of that courtroom. Before we continue, a brief invitation. If this kind of calm, philosophical reflection helps you, subscribe to the channel and leave a thoughtful comment about where simplicity feels hardest for you right now. Naming it clearly is often the first act of strength. And now the journey deepens, because the discomfort of simplicity is not only about attention and control. It is also about identity. The hard truth is that many of your complexities are not tasks, they are costumes. When life is crowded, you can feel important. When your calendar is full, you can feel needed. When your problems are intricate, you can feel special. Uniquely burdened, uniquely misunderstood, uniquely exempt from ordinary limits. Simplicity threatens that story. It suggests that you might be ordinary and still worthy. For some people, that is the most unsettling possibility of all. Fifth reversal. Simplicity does not shrink you. It removes the props you use to prove you exist. You discover whether your sense of self can stand without constant evidence. Reflection. A human being is not a resume, not an algorithm of outputs, not a bundle of reactions. The Stoics returned again and again to character. What you are when no one is applauding. Simplicity is uncomfortable because it makes character visible. When you cannot distract yourself, you meet your impatience. When you cannot blame chaos, you meet your choices. When you cannot hide behind complexity, you meet your standards. A practical example. You decide to spend an evening without screens. The room grows quiet. You attempt to read, but your attention fragments. You attempt to sit, but your body fidgets. You begin to notice an anxious energy that was always there, only previously disguised by stimulation. This is not failure. This is data. Simplicity reveals what complexity concealed. The discomfort is not proof that simplicity is wrong. It is proof that you have been running. Sixth reversal. The goal is not to feel comfortable. The goal is to become capable. A mind that cannot be alone cannot be free. A life that cannot be simple cannot be directed. And the reason simplicity feels uncomfortable is that it is a kind of training. It asks you to tolerate the absence of noise without manufacturing drama. The hard truth is that many people confuse peace with the removal of all tension. But life contains tension, the way the body contains gravity. The question is not whether you will feel tension, but whether you will convert tension into meaning or into panic. Reflection. Pain in the Stoic view is not always negotiable, but panic is. Fear arises. You do not choose that. Yet you can choose whether fear becomes a teacher or a tyrant. Simplicity helps fear speak plainly. Complexity distorts fear into countless disguises: procrastination, irritability, obsessive planning, constant checking, shallow entertainment that leaves you more tired than before. When the disguises fall away, fear is smaller than it seemed, but it is clearer. And clarity is confronting. A practical example: you keep a habit of checking messages the moment you wake. You tell yourself it is efficient, but what it really does is outsource the first moment of your day to whatever arrives. Simplicity would be to begin with what you can govern. One deliberate breath, one honest question, one chosen action. The discomfort is that you are no longer being carried, you are carrying yourself. Seventh reversal. Freedom is not having endless options. Freedom is being able to refuse. The modern world offers you infinite doors and calls it liberation, while quietly making you terrified of choosing. Because every choice closes other doors. Simplicity closes doors on purpose. That is why it feels like loss. And it is a loss of fantasy, of alternative selves, of the comforting belief that you can be everything someday. Reflection. There is a deep relief in grieving the lives you will not live. Not with bitterness, but with maturity. When you stop pretending you will do it all, you can finally do what matters. The Stoic does not renounce the world. He renounces the demand that the world conform to his cravings. In that renunciation, he becomes more effective, not less. He stops scattering his energy across 1,000 maybes. A practical example: you simplify your goals for the year, not because you lack ambition, but because you want integrity. You choose one health practice you can sustain, one relationship you will nourish, one craft you will improve. At first, you feel anxious because you are no longer hiding behind grand plans. You now face the ordinary, repetitive work of becoming better. That work is simple, and it is humbling, but it is real. Eighth reversal. Simplicity is not a retreat from life's complexity. It is a refusal to add unnecessary suffering. It is saying, I will meet what is here, not what my imagination is producing. Anxiety often lives in the future, where it feels powerful because it cannot be disproven. Simplicity returns you to the present, where fear becomes specific, and what is specific can be handled. The hard truth is that your mind may prefer anxiety to action, because action risks an outcome. Anxiety can last forever without being wrong. Action forces reality to answer back. But reality's answers, though sometimes painful, are cleaner than anxious speculation. Simplicity is choosing clean pain over dirty pain. Reflection. Clean pain is the honest strain of growth, the direct sting of rejection, the clear fatigue after meaningful effort. Dirty pain is the suffering you manufacture by resisting what already is, by rehearsing humiliation that has not happened, by clinging to what has ended, by trying to win arguments with ghosts. Simplicity is a moral hygiene of the mind. A practical example. You stop trying to be understood by everyone. You speak more plainly. You accept that some people will misread you. You do not rush to correct every misunderstanding. This feels uncomfortable because the ego wants to be safe, and being safe seems to mean being approved. But approval is outside your command. Your clarity is not. When you choose clarity, you begin to feel a different kind of security, the security of not betraying yourself. Now the final reversal, the one that changes the whole meaning of discomfort. Simplicity feels uncomfortable because it returns you to responsibility, and responsibility is heavy only until you stop resisting it. When you stop resisting, responsibility becomes steadiness. And steadiness becomes peace, not a bright, effortless happiness, but a grounded, adult peace. You will still have days where you crave noise. You will still have moments where you complicate things to avoid a truth. The practice is not perfection. The practice is noticing. When you notice, you regain your freedom in small increments. One simpler decision, one honest boundary, one quiet morning, one refusal to panic, one willingness to feel what you are feeling without turning it into a catastrophe. Because simplicity is not emptiness, it is space. And in space, the essential parts of you can finally be heard. Conscience, courage, gratitude, resolve. The world will keep shouting. Your devices will keep beckoning. Your fears will keep offering you elaborate stories, but you can learn to live without accepting every invitation. Let the discomfort remain for a moment without trying to fix it. Let it be the doorway it is. Complexity will always promise you relief. Simplicity will offer you something rarer. The strength to stand in your own life without needing it to be louder than your own mind. And when you are ready, remember this: sincerity is simple, and that is why it is so hard.